Hey, beauty friends, it's Meredith Roddy from Beadalon and Artistic Wire. Welcome to another fantastic class in the Michael's Community Classroom. Today we are going to be making a bow necklace. And I meant to put my bow necklace on before I started class, and you know what? I forgot. So I am going to just go ahead and hold that up right there. That's what we're making today. A cute little bow necklace. So much fun and so simple. And as we go along, we are going to learn the basics of beading. We're going to be doing some crimping. We're going to work with wire guardians, crimp covers, all of the basics, but with a little bit of a twist to make a strung necklace, but that has a cute little bow on the bottom. Again, as with many of these classes, the skills that you will learn today are transferable to all kinds of jewelry making. And if you are an expert jewelry maker, welcome as well. Hopefully you will be able to glean a couple of new tips and tricks along the way. As always, please, if you're joining us live, welcome. Feel free to add any questions or comments that you have in the comments. I'm pretty good at following along if things don't get too hairy or too quick over there. And then, of course, if you are joining us on the replay, welcome as well. The instructions for this class will be linked right on the bottom in the description of the class. So I think that is it for me. Without further ado, let's turn that camera down and get started with what we need. And Kana, if you don't mind going ahead and posting the instructions again in the comments, just so that everybody has them, if they haven't downloaded them already, we're ready to go ahead and get started. So what we're going to be needing today for our class, we're going to be using 49 strand, 018 bright Beadalon bead stringing wire. We are stringing with wire because we are making a necklace, a strung necklace. We want it to be durable and long lasting. And we're using bright because most of our wire is going to be hidden behind the beads. You could use a silver color if you were using translucent beads to really make those beads shine. But an 018 is a really good all-purpose diameter for this project. Now, if some of the words that I'm using, 49 strand, 018, the different diameters are a little confusing. You're like, these are the first time I've heard those numbers when referencing Beadalon or any bead stringing wire. I recommend going back and watching the 5 things you should never do when making beaded jewelry video over on the Michael's Community Classroom YouTube page. It is chock full of all of the information that you need. A lot of it I'm going to be covering today, but it goes a little bit further in depth into strand count and construction and diameter and all of those different things. Suffice to say, for today's class, we are going to be using 49 strand 018 bead stringing wire. So we'll also need the standard things that you need when you're doing any bead stringing. I'm going to be using a number 2 crimp tube. It tells me right here on the spool what kind of crimp tube I use, so I don't have to worry about that. I could use a number 1 crimp bead also. Again, in that video, differences between crimp tubes and crimp beads and why or why not it matters. We're also going to need crimp covers, wire guardians, and lots of different beads. So I am using a mix again. All right, so I misplaced it for a second. These are these great, they come in the 4 strands with 4, 6, 8, and 10 millimeter rondelles. The one that I'm using today happens to be the aqua. There's a part number right there for reference. But there are probably, I don't know, maybe a dozen different colorways of these 4 strand sets in Michael's right now. And I grabbed a lot of them. And if you have joined me for many of my recent classes, you've seen me use them in a lot of different projects. I know Sarah Lovecraft really likes them as well. Which reminds me, if you are joining me live, I would love to know, is this your first class? Welcome to the Michaels Community Classroom. Welcome to Jewelry Making with Michaels and Beadalon. It's wonderful to have you here, and I do see some old familiar names popping up in the comments, so I appreciate you joining us today as well. We're also going to need some seed beads as spacer beads. Those are the beads that kind of go in between the rondelles here. You could use anything for those. You could use daisy spacers, you could use smaller beads. I love using seed beads, especially these size 6 seed beads from my friends John Bead. They're the perfect size for a spacer. They're inexpensive. I always seem to have some around. So they're a great one to have. We're also going to need some charms. So this is a different set than I have labeled in the instructions. There are so many cute charms at Michael's now. So I just grabbed these ones. Obviously I've used one for another project, but I thought I'd pull out the star from this one as well. And then just the regular tools that you need. We're going to use a crimper. We're also going to use, of course, you're going to need a nipper tool. And then I listed on the instructions some bead stoppers, which are always smart to have at hand. And I'm going to happen to have a big old box of them here. So I'm going to open that up. So I have a couple of bead stoppers at the ready. What is a bead stopper, you ask? They're these little spring-like guys. They go like this. Some of them have little pink tips. These ones just happen to not have pink tips. You give them a little squeezy squeeze here. I'll show you how to use those in just a second. Susie, I appreciate that comment. She says she always picks up a tip or a reminder of something that she's forgotten, even though she's watched a lot of my classes. And I appreciate each and every time you have joined me. All right, let's go ahead and get started. First instruction, we're going to cut a piece of wire 12 inches long. So I have my ruler is 6 inches here, and I'm going to put the glasses down. And real quick, way this guy works, there's a clip. You want to take that clip off. It keeps your wire in behaving, I should say. And I always put my clip back on when I'm done. And this is where that bead stopper comes in real handy. I'm going to give it a little squeeze, and you don't need to open it up really, really hard. You just want to squeeze it enough that you can slide that wire in. And now when I string my beads on, I don't have to worry about them falling off of my wire. They're just gonna stay there and be really nice and secure. So first things first, I'm going to thread a crimp tube. So crimp tubes, my crimp tubes have already fallen away from me. So I'm going to grab my crimp tube. I just have crimp tubes over here in a little container. So that's what I'm doing off camera, is grabbing crimp tube. And crimp tubes are these little teeny tiny tubes that slide over the wire. And I'm going to pick up a wire guardian. So if you are new, again, welcome, but we're learning a lot of different things today. This is a wire guardian. It's a little horseshoe shaped piece of metal, and it has 2 channels, one on either side. And we're going to go up 1 channel and around the top. And I'm working real close to the end here, down the other channel. And I'm going to kind of tighten that up. I'm also going to add in half of my clasp. So I'm just using a simple tag and lobster claw for my class today, or for my clasp today, also my class today. You can use a toggle clasp, a barrel clasp, really any clasp that is your preference, you can use. I just really like these tags with a lobster claw. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to thread my wire back down. And just give me one moment. I'm just going to bop all of the extra stuff out of the way. Hopefully I will still in reach, but out of the way. I'm gonna adjust my camera just a little bit so that we can get real nice and close there. There we go. All right, now we can really see what's going on. So before I do anything else, what I like to do is come in here with my chain nose pliers and just very gently bring the ends of that wire guardian together. I want them to just touch. And I do this for a couple of different reasons. The first of which is I don't like when they're out because they can get a little scratchy. And then they can also pull on things. So just give them a nice gentle squeeze together. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm making sure that my wires are not crossed in that crimp tube. The last thing that I'm doing is I am double checking and I'm thinking ahead. I don't always remember to think ahead, but today I'm thinking ahead because I need to leave just a little bit of space here because I'm going to be putting a crimp cover over my crimp tube. So I just want to make sure that I leave a little bit of extra space. Then I'm going to come in here with my crimp tool. This is the standard crimping pliers. And you can see here, there are two notches. There's a round notch in the front and there's a dimpled notch in the back. I'm going to do a 3-step crimping technique. Apologies to everyone who has heard me do this a gazillion times now, but I'm going to start in that front rounded notch. I'm going to go back to the back notch, and then I'm going to come back to the front notch. So first things first, front notch. I'm going to give just a gentle squeeze in that front notch. Then I'm going to come back to the back notch. I'm going to double check and just make sure that I've left that extra room for my crimp cover. And I've made a taco for those of you who are paying attention. The first step is to turn that crimp tube into a little taco. Oops. I think I have solved my depth of focus problem with my fancy new phone that never focuses right. I've actually just bought a new phone for my son. So I'm taking his 12. The older versions of the phones, I think, have a better focus and focal depth for what we're doing. So I'm going to try that out for the next class and we can see if we get a little bit better focus on that. So what I just did is I put that crimp tube back into the front jaw of the plier and I'm just rounding it around and around and around in that front jaw. I'm not coming to the tip and smushing it. The tool is calibrated. It's meant to have that wire when it turns into a burrito from a taco. It's meant to hug it appropriately. If you go and then smash down on that wire or you smash down on a crimp at any given point of time, all you're doing is crushing all of those wires and you're going to end up having a much better chance of your wire snapping and breaking. We definitely do not want that to happen. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a crimp cover. So crimp covers look like Pac-Man. They are, I can balance it on my finger. Here, I'll balance it in my hand. They look like a little Pac-Man. And you are going to, oops, I'm going to drop it on the table. No, you're going to realize that you should have gotten a manicure because your nails are too long. You're going to get that Pac-Man. Sometimes it takes a minute. You can see I'm kind of struggling a little bit, but it'll go in. The crimp wants to go in there. And now I have my crimp tube inside that crimp cover. You don't need a crimp cover. I like teaching it, especially when I'm doing kind of a basics of jewelry with a little bit of a kick, because it's one of those things that is good to know how to do. There are a couple of different ways of closing a crimp cover. I'm using my chain nose pliers. I find that for me, it works better to use small movements to get those two sides, and sometimes I end up mangling it. Let's see if I can not mangle it today. To get those two sides to come together. Other people have great luck using do I even have, thought I had down here a miting crimping plier, but I think I brought it back upstairs and I still have yet to bring it downstairs. I think there's one on the wall over there. But you could use, we're just going to pretend that this is a mighty crimping tool. You can use the mighty crimping tool to get in there and bring those sides together as well. But the idea is, I didn't do the greenest job. It's not so bad. You want to make sure that those two Pac-Man sides come together and you have a nice bead around the crimp tube. All right, so now we're ready to start beading. So all of that time and effort and energy, and we haven't even put any beads on. So what we're going to do is we are going to string on 6 millimeter rondelles. Though those are the medium size. So there are 4 sizes on that card. It's a 4, a 6, an 8, and a 10. We're going to be using the 6s. And I don't have quite enough of the turquoise to do the whole bow. This is what the part that we're doing first is this bow right here. So I'm going to alternate. I'm going to start with a turquoise, and I'm just going to string on 6 beads. So 1, 2, and I'm alternating it with this kind of it's like a green, an iridescent-y green color. I think I used this for another project. You can always go back and see all of the old projects on the Michael's YouTube channel. So 2, 4, 6. So that's 6 beads. And then before I do my rondelle bead, I'm just going to tuck that tail in. Sometimes it slips out, but I'm going to at least tuck that in at the very beginning. Okay. Oh my goodness. That's so funny. So I put my part of my clasp on here totally on autopilot for teaching it a different class, a different way, like a basic beading class, right? This tag actually doesn't go here. We just do the wire guardian. I'm going to cut this off. So apologies if you've already gone ahead and you're beading along with me or watching this video and putting your clasp on. The easiest thing is just to undo this, snip it off, start over again, and not put the tag there. Just leave it raw because that's where the dangles are going to be. So autopilot for bead stringing, putting the half clasp on. And if you're not making the bow, if you're just starting, that's how you would do it. But I jumped way ahead in my instructions, so I apologize. I'm just going to snip mine off. But if you're going along, we've only strung up 6 beads. I would just suggest snipping this off and starting over again. I apologize for that. Okay, but what we are going to do is we're going to string on our rondelle. So it's one of the beads, and you could use really anything here. You could use a round bead. You could use a bigger rondelle bead. I just really like the way that these look, and it gives just a little bit of extra sparkle here in the middle of my design. You just need to make sure that the hole, see how that hole is a little bit bigger? You need your hole to be able to accommodate 4 passes of the wire. So that's really the only thing that you have to be aware of there. But I am going to put that rondelle bead on, and then I'm going to string on 11 more of the 6 millimeter beads. So let's count that out. 1, 2, and I'm going to do, again, I'm going to alternate just because I don't have enough of these turquoise beads. So I'm going to do 2 turquoises and a green. So 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so now that I have my 11 beads, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to double check that count real quick. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. Okay, I'm going to go back through this rondelle to form a loop. That back out of the way. And just back through that rondelle. Now you can see how you need that hole to be big enough for multiple passes. And you can see the bow is starting to take shape. halfway there. And feel free to make your tail longer, your bow longer. It's all kind of a proportion game depending on what beads you're using and what and how you want it to look. Okay, so we are now on step 4, and I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to string 11 more of the 6mm rondelles to make the other side of the bow. So I'm going to follow that same pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so 11 beads on this side too. And feel free to do an asymmetrical bow too, right? You can have one side be bigger than the other. But I'm going to do that same step that I just did. I'm going to make a loop by going back through that rondelle. So my bead wire is coming out of here, and I'm going to go back through to make the second half of my bow loop. Okay, now all I have to do is this part right here. So same thing, 6 beads here. 1, 2, oops, wrong color on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and I'm going to do those very same steps that I did on this side. I'm going to do them a little bit quicker this time, just because we've got to get to the second half of our project, but same thing. So I'm going to reach over to my tower of crimp tubes, grab a crimp tube, put it on. I'm going to grab a wire guardian. I'm going to string up one side of the wire guardian, down the other side of the wire guardian, back through that crimp tube. And I'm also going to go back through a couple of beads just to hide that tail. Okay, just 3 beads. You could go through 4, you could go through 2. It's not a hard and fast rule. So before I do anything else, I'm going to come in here with my chain nose pliers and just very gently squeeze those 2 ends together. And you can see I'm not adding anything on the other end. And I might just actually leave this little tag here because it's kind of cute and it'll add a little bit of extra to my dangle. But again, I'll need a different different clasp when I get to the clasp part. And I'm just molding this into shape. Sometimes your bow is going to want to not be in shape. Just kind of use your fingers to push everything so that the beads go where you want them to go. And then this is the hardest part for me, is backing out just enough room so that I know that I can fit my crimp cover on. You want about 1 millimeter on each side, and I'm going to come in again with that front part of the crimp tool. I'm just going to bop this up a little bit, see if we can get a better focus. So I went in with the front part of the crimp tool. Now I'm coming in with the back part of the crimp tool to make my taco. And then I'm going to come back to the front part of the crimp tool, and then that taco is going perpendicular up and down in the front part of that crimp tool. And I'm going to squeeze down and around. And I have a nice crimp. Now, of course, I can't keep that tail there. So I'm going to snip that off. And I'm going to come in real quick with a crimp cover so I don't forget. I feel like that would be the type of thing that I would forget at the end. Put my crimp cover on and come in here with my nice chain nose pliers and give a nice squeeze, a nice gentle squeeze, and bring those 2 ends together. All right, looking good so far. Cute little bow. And this could be, I feel like we could do a little pin with this. I don't know, so much of a bracelet. I don't know, it could be kind of cute as a bracelet. I don't know, just a real cute little piece right there, our bow. But we need to turn this bow into a necklace, which is easy enough to do. So let us go on, and we're going to cut 2 pieces of wire now, 12 inches. So let us see. Kathy is asking a really good question. She says, I wonder if the bow could be attached to a child's hair clip. I don't see why not. I think that that is a great idea. You could wire wrap it on. I think I would wire wrap it on. I think that would be the easiest solution for that challenge, to wire wrap it on. All right, I've got my 2 pieces here, and I'm going to put a bead stopper on both of them, just because I'm going to put this one aside, and I have a tendency to lose my put aside pieces of wire. You know, you're a wire nerd when you're like, oh, this is some really nice 1/8 wire, some really nice 49 strand wire. Okay, so I'm going to now take my bow, and I am going to attach one of the wires between the 4th and the 5th bead, counting from the center. Okay, that's a lot of words. So let's count from the center. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the 4th and the 5th bead right here. That's where I'm going to attach this wire. So again, we're doing a lot of crimping in this. I'm not tricking anybody into perfecting their crimping skills, but maybe I am. So what did I say? That was the 4th and 5th bead. So 2, 4, 4th and 5th bead. I'm just going to thread this wire between the 4th and 5th bead. That is a really good question. Susie is asking, would using 7 strand give the bow more structure? You've been paying attention. You got a gold star for bead smarts today. Indeed, it would. Yeah, it would 100% give it more structure, because that is what 7 strand does. It makes things a little stiffer, gives them a little bit more structure. Yeah, I love that. That's a great question. Thank you. The student has become the teacher. My work here is done. All right, so I'm just going ahead, just like we did before. I'm crimping this into place. And I really like crimping and using wire rather than tying knots and using string like a wildfire or a silk cord or any of the other things that are on the market. It just feels more secure to me. I don't have to worry about glue. I don't have to worry about slippage. I don't have to worry about breakage, because I'm using a beading wire that has an incredibly strong break strength. It just, whenever I can, I tend to crimp and use beading wire. I didn't even need my bead stopper here. Okay, so now for the stringing part. Okay, this is the repetitive part here. So this is the part where you can feel free to ask some questions in the chat, because I will be able to, as I'm going along, answer them. You'll also see if I can keep my place. That's always the challenge. So I'm going to start with now a 10 millimeter. So I've got these 10 millimeter beads over here. Actually, pull these out of frame so we can see if we can get a little bit better focus. It might be me grabbing and reaching for things a little bit more, but. All right, so the pattern is 1 10 millimeter. And I'm going to bring this down, and I'm going to string it over that tail. And then I'm going to do a spacer bead. So the pattern is big bead, spacer bead, little bead, or in this case, medium bead, spacer bead. So I'm going to put my spacer bead over that tail too. Is another reason why I love size 6 seed beads, is because they go over without any problem 2 strands of 0.018 beading wire. All right, and then we're going to do an 8 millimeter and put that over, and a little bead. And we're going to continue that pattern for, well, at least, well, maybe not at least, but in my instructions, I have it going 10 times. You want to do it the amount of times that is going to be the best length for your necklace. Maybe you want to make this a real short choker, or you're making it for a small person, or you want to make it a real long necklace. I'm not sure kind of proportionally if that would look the best. But different people are different sizes, and different people like their jewelry to lay in different ways. And so you have to decide for yourself what the length is. That's always, for me, for the length is always the biggest challenge when I'm making bracelets. So I tend to make my bracelets adjustable. And there have been a couple of classes that I've done in the Michael's Community Classroom. I'll have to go back and look and see, A, how long ago, and B, how specific the adjustable bracelets that I've made are. I know I've done a bunch with a little sliding macrame knot, which is my favorite technique, because that way you don't have to know the person's wrist size, or guess the person's wrist size. Or, again, as I was saying, some people like to wear their jewelry in different ways. My mom likes her bracelets real loose, and I like my bracelets to not go past my wrist bone here. And so if you do it adjustable, then you don't have to worry about it. Just reading the kind comments. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you. All right, so quick stringing here. And this pattern, you could do anything here. You could use a bead soup. You could use a contrasting complementary color. The possibilities are limitless here. I just chose a big bead, little bead spacer pattern, because that's tends to be my go-to when I am doing any beading. I like a big bead, little bead, or we could do a graduated, with, starting with the 10 millimeters, then the 8 millimeters, and the 6 millimeters, and then the 4 millimeters. That would be really pretty also. See, I feel like I need to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I knew I was getting close. And this is the last one, 10. So if you do make this project, not only will you have really great experience with crimping, but please post it on your socials and do a hashtag of Learn with Michaels. Let's see, we could hashtag Make It with Michaels. We could hashtag Beadalon, would be great. And also hashtag me. I'm at Meredith Joy Designs, and I always love seeing what people make. It always makes my day. All right, so I've gone ahead and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 beads. So I know that that's the right size for me, how I want to make my necklace. And I'm ending on a small and an 8 millimeter bead, and then also on a seed bead. I always like to taper my necklaces and end on a small bead. I find that it's just easier to crimp that way. There's a lot going on down here. And Margaret, you ask a very good question. How long is this one side? This one side is probably 8 inches. Okay. So it's going to be about a 16, 17 inch necklace. I want it to kind of hit right at my clavicle. But you have to kind of see for yourself where you want it to hit on your body. All right, so crimp tube, going back through a couple of beads, pulling this down. And I want to pull this tight. Oh, you know what I forgot to put on here? Forgot my wire guardian. So I'm just going to back it out and add my wire guardian. Why not? So if you ever forget to add your wire guardian before you crimp, it's easy enough to do. Now, why do I use wire guardians? You don't need to use wire guardians in your designs. I like them for a couple of different reasons. First of all, I think they look nice. Second of all, I think that they help add the perfect amount of space that you need around your clasp, because you don't want to, sorry, I was getting out of frame there. You don't want your clasp to be so tight that there's no wiggle room in between it and your design. So I just put my clasp on there, and I'm going to go back through my crimp tube now that I have that wire guardian on, and back down through a couple of beads. It doesn't matter where your wire comes out, just kind of let it come out wherever it wants to. Oops, if it even wants to come out. There we go. Okay, so again, like we've done a bunch of times already, we're going to come in here and squeeze those ends. And I want to make sure that I have enough wiggle room in here so it's not super, super stiff. It's just a good habit to get into. It's not going to have a huge amount of impact in this kind of a design. But as you're doing your jewelry, you always want to make sure that this is not so tight. I also need to make sure that I have left that extra millimeter or so on both sides so that I can get my crimp cover in there. Yeah, if you struggle with having your loops be the same size, wire guardians are a great way to make sure. They also add a little bit um, of extra strength, and they mitigate any friction that's going to happen here at the class. They're just great, and they look nice too. Paula's making along with me and loves the bow. Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you for letting me know. I really appreciate that. I'm glad that you're doing that. So you're going to come in here and just snip this off. Make sure, of course, you snip the short wire, not the longer wire. Ooh, Kelly has a good question. She's asking, is it a thing for the loop to be too big? It's a really interesting question. I think I'm going to answer it like this. I don't think that the loop can be too big where it's going to be a problem in the structure or the function of the bracelet. I just think that it will be too big that you won't like how it looks. I think that that's a fair answer. I think if I'm wondering if others in the group would agree with me as well. All right, so I'm just putting my crimp cover on just to be symmetrical. And now we're going to really quickly go to our second side. We're doing great on time. We're going to do that very same thing on the second side. So since I had my wire guardian, I was able to find my wire. I almost didn't. And we're going to do that very same thing. So I'm going to come back with my crimp tube. And I'm going to put that crimp tube on. I'm going to count again 2, 4 between the 4th and the 5th bead here. And I'm going to put my crimp tube down. And you want to make sure my tail here is a little small. It's always tempting to want to not waste wire by making your tails real small. And incidentally, just as an aside, if you're real concerned about having these loops be exactly the same, you can go ahead and put a wire guardian on here. There's no reason that you can't do that. It's a little fiddly. I'm not going to lie to you. I have tried and I've done it that way before. It can get a little fiddly, but it's something, something else that you can do. So I'm just going to go ahead and crimp these guys down real quick. And again, for all things crimping, I know I did my first crimp pretty slow and steady, and the rest of them I'm doing a little bit faster. In the interest of time, but I definitely suggest going back and watching that, the 5 things you should never do when making beaded jewelry. It's just a really good, it's a fun title, but it's really just how to make jewelry the right way. Another, it should be like the subtitle, right? 5 things you should never do. PS, how to make jewelry the right way. And I could give a really good video on how to mangle your crimp covers because I'm really good at doing that. The secret to a really good, well-closed crimp cover is patience and time and practice. All right, so I have my second ready to go, and we're just going to go ahead and start the other side. So with my big bead, spacer bead, little bead, just a little bit closer now that we can see what we're doing. So Kelly is asking, do I have a video on just crimping? Yes. So many videos on just crimping. I think the best short video. So on the Michael's YouTube channel, there are tons of projects that I've done that show crimping and highlight crimping. But if you just want a real quick down and dirty 1, 2, 3, this is what you should do. I would suggest heading over to the Beadalon YouTube channel. There is let's see, what is it called? I think it's called it's very obvious what the title is. It's like, oh, I think it's called How to Crimp Like a Boss. That's what it's called. This is crimping. I think it's, maybe 3 minutes. If you just want a real highlight down and dirty, crimp, rather than, all of the extra song and dance that comes along with crimping, that's what I would suggest. But once you learn how to crimp and how to crimp the right way, it really does go a long way to making your jewelry look more professional, making it last longer. And then, there's just the kind of the satisfaction of knowing that you did it right and it looks really nice. And again, I cannot stress enough, practice. So much practice is and all of these techniques, whether it's making a wrap loop or a simple loop, whether it's crimping, whether it's kind of knowing instinctively how to choose the right thread for your project. There's so many different things that go into making jewelry. And it kind of, I've been doing this professionally for 17 years, but for fun for a lot longer than that. And along the way, I have made all of the mistakes. If you've made a mistake, I have definitely made that mistake. But you just kind of, if it brings you joy up like that, for example, I forgot to put my spacer bead in. If it brings you joy, like it brings me joy, hopefully it'll be something that you do for a long time. The one thing I have had to do a lot of adjusting is with magnification. Has really been one of my challenges these days, that and keeping my nails short. But magnification makes a really big difference. So you can see I'm doing my necklace. I have them lined up like this on purpose. I have them so for me visually, it's really helpful to see as I'm going along which bead comes next without having to really think about it. And then also to make sure that my lengths are the same. So this is really helpful when I'm doing, maybe a more intricate pattern than this pattern is. But no mistakes, right? All my beads are lined up. Everybody is as they should be. So we're ready to go ahead and second side of the clasp. And I love that this project is really start to finish, maybe 45 minutes, half an hour, because if you take away all of the talking and the explaining, you can really put this project together pretty quickly. So last minute gift, last minute outfit, or, you know, a quick TV show binge. That is, all right. My wire is not quite going where I want it to go, so I'm just kind of pushing it down and pushing these beads over until I can find a place to get a little bit of a purchase. And see, what did Meredith forget to do this time? Add the second half of the clasp, right? So we're gonna just back that out and back it out of my crimp tube. And I'm gonna grab, I have my lobster claw here, so I'm just gonna grab a tag. I was saying in the beginning, it's one of my favorite things, favorite ways to finish off is just with a nice little swivel lobster claw and a tag. But if a toggle clasp is your favorite, or you have a really cool clasp that you want to use, really any clasp will work for this project. Magnetic clasp. Ooh, I love that idea. Marguerite says, what a great necklace for bridesmaids. Oh my gosh, I would love to see that maybe in crystals and pearls, or in your wedding colors. Do people do wedding colors anymore? I don't know. Wedding colors were really important to me. I'm not sure if that's a theme or still a thing. Jessica's asking, what is the name of the pliers that you're using to squeeze the wire guards? Well, I'll tell you, these are my chain nose pliers. I want to make sure that my tag is right up in the round part of my wire guardians. And it's just real gentle. But I'm just using my standard chain nose pliers. You don't want to use like a round nose plier or anything else here. You want to use a chain nose plier. And then again, I want to make sure that I don't have extra wire happening, but I also don't want it to be so super tight. And I need to make sure, I'm really proud of myself for remembering each and every time to back out a little bit of space for my crimp cover. I don't always use crimp covers, so it's kind of an afterthought to remember to leave space for them. And oftentimes, and again, if you've been playing along, you've seen me forget plenty of times in the past. I do sometimes forget. And I mean, it's not the end of the world. So you either don't use a crimp cover, or you can usually kind of finagle it in. I just like not having to finagle it in. And again, I'm going to take my little Pac-Man crimp cover and just kind of get it over. And you can see you just kind of have to finagle it on. There's no kind of rhyme or reason to it. And still, again, with those same tools, really, I've only used 3 tools in this whole project. I've used a cutter, I've used my crimping pliers, and then this chain nose pliers here. I'm just going to very gently close that up. And a lot of people struggle with crimping. They don't like it. It doesn't work for them. Again, I just suggest practice, practice, practice. And crimp covers really can hide a multitude of sins when it comes to mangling a crimp. But you really don't want to mangle your crimps, because really what that does is it hurts the wire underneath. And that becomes a problem for the structural integrity of our work. All right, so we're not quite done yet. We've done our stringing, we've done the bow, but a project wouldn't be a Meredith project if it didn't have some dangle-doos. So I'm not going to do wire wrapped dangle-doos. I'm going to add some charms, because who doesn't love some super, super cute charms? So I think I'm going to take, there are 2 stars here, and I really like those. I'm going to actually use the jump rings that come with, and actually here I am, and I'm doing and one more tool. This is a bent chain nose pliers, because I need 2 chain nose pliers to open up that jump ring. And then I'm just going to leave that tag on. It's not going to bother me. I might think about snipping it off later on, but it's not causing too many problems. And then I'm going to wiggle that jump ring back together. So I'm not pulling the jump ring apart like this. I'm going back and forth to close it up. So cute. All right, and then I'm going to take this star here and just pulling it off the card. I could take it off from the back, but it's just as easy just to do it this way. And then I'm going to slide that onto the wire guardian. Come in here and wiggle that back. Now, I don't know if you could hear that click or not, but when you hear that click, that's how you know that your jump ring is closed properly. And yes, you can. So Catalina's saying she uses her regular crimper tool on the crimp covers. I find that the jaw of the regular crimper tool is just a little too small for me. The Mighty really works, has a better smooth side of the jaw for those crimp covers. But if you're using smaller crimp covers, like a 3mm crimp cover rather than the 4mm that I'm using, that standard crimping plier might just be the thing that works for you. All right, so not bad at all. I bet you could bang this project out in 45 minutes, no problem at all. So if you had 6 to make for your bridesmaids, maybe in an afternoon, a couple of evenings, in your wedding colors, or in a silver or like a crystal and a pearl would be gorgeous. And make sure, if you do make those projects, definitely post them on your socials and tag Learn with Michaels, Make It with Michaels, Beadalon, and then me, Meredith Joy Designs. So Kata, you can go ahead and take the top camera. Thank you everybody so much for participating today. Let's put this on and see how it looks. So you can see with those 10 beads, the length. I have kind of a weird neckline today. It's kind of a high neckline, but you can see it's just kind of the perfect length for my neck. It might not be the perfect length for your neck. You might need it shorter or longer, but for me, this is how I like it. So we'll just kind of put that over. That's not so bad, right? Usually like a longer neck necklace when I have a top like this. That would be an interesting class, right? Kind of what the right necklines are. For me, I just put it on, and if I like how it looks, then I go for it. I know that there are a lot of like rules and stuff for things like that, but I'll leave that for another expert. So once again, thank you everybody so very much for hanging out with me today. Sarah Lovecraft will be up in a couple of weeks with her wire working project, and then I'll be back with another project in December. So be sure to post what you've made, and I think that's it for me today. Until next time, happy beading.